This is cs952, Introduction to Web Technologies and Design, and we're going to review a little bit about HTML and CSS. Now, in this class, we're not going to be learning how to code web pages from hand. You don't need to learn web code in order to successfully complete this class, but we will be doing some cut, copying, and pasting of web code. I'm going to say, hey, find this particular word in this code and delete it. So it's good to have a little understanding about HTML. And so let's take some basic text here. I've typed some text in. And to go along with this, there is a PDF on the website on HTML and CSS Essentials. And let's look at our code that we have. So this is I just typed in Jack and Jill went up the hill and just typed it right here in plain text on this web code. And let's go to Design View and see what it looks like. Well, right away we can see we don't have any paragraph breaks, right? It's just one long sentence. So let's apply some formatting to our text. So I can highlight all this text, and then I can use the Property Inspector to apply some format. So what if we put a paragraph tag, put some paragraph formatting on that. So just select a paragraph, and when I do, look at what happens right away. An opening and closing paragraph tag was added. There's the opening paragraph tag, and then we have the closing paragraph tag. And this is really typical for HTML. So I've got my notepad open here. So the opening paragraph tag looks like that. It's a P with angular brackets around it, and the closing paragraph tag looks like this. And that is essentially what most HTML is like. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language, and what it means is you basically take ordinary plain old text and then you mark it up. You put these tags on either side of it, and these tags change how this text appears. So we used a paragraph tag. Now let's go back to Design View. It looks pretty much the same. What if I'm gonna click here on my text. I'm in Design View now. What if I change the format from paragraph to heading? Well, now it's quite a bit larger because the H1 heading by default is the largest heading that we have in HTML. If I choose H2, that's going to be a little bit smaller. If we switch back to Code View, we're going to see pretty much it looks the same as it did before, but instead of an opening and closing paragraph tag, we have an opening and closing H2 tag. So I'll type that out just so we can see it. That's H2, that's the opening tag, and then we have some text, and then we have our closing H2 tag. So when we look at all these tags and all these elements on our page, really it just comes down to an opening and a closing tag. There are a few cases when we don't have opening and closing tags, and they're very few, and they're somewhat exceptional. We'll talk about that in just a second. So let's switch back to paragraph. So that's our paragraph tag. Now if I go to Design View, and where it says Jack and Jill, if I type right after Jill and hit the Enter key, now we're on a new line. Went up the hill, and I can hit Enter and put that on a new line. And when I put these line breaks, let's see what happens to our code. So in our code, all we've done is just put each line of text with an opening and closing paragraph tag. And that's because by default a paragraph tag puts each line of text on its own line and creates space between each line of paragraph. So let's have a look at some of these most commonly used HTML tags. So the first one on the list is the div tag, and this is just a generic box that we use to hold elements on our web page. A div tag can be used for most anything. It's very, very flexible. We have our heading tags. We just used those. Our paragraph tags. We just looked at the paragraph tag. The anchor tag, well, that's what we use to link to web pages. And we're going to be looking at those. But when you have a word that says, click here to see our movie on YouTube, then we will have opening and closing anchor tags around to see our new movie on YouTube, and that tells the web browser, hey, this text is special. When you click on it, it's going to take you to another page. So we also have unordered list and ordered list. We have list items. Let's go back and look at our Jack and the Jill thing, right? So we have Jack came down. That's where we left off. So we have Jack came down. I'm going to hit enter and broke his crown. And Jill came tumbling after. So if we look at this code now, we'll see that each one of these lines is in its own paragraph. Okay? Now, we can put these in an ordered or unordered list. That's super simple. That's also one of our very common tags. We are just looking at over here. We are talking about ordered and unordered list. And let me show you what those look like. I'm going to go back to Dreamweaver, and I'm going to highlight all of this text. And down in the format, sorry, in the property inspector, the little dots are unordered list, the numbers are ordered list. We're going to click on the dots, and now you can see our text has little dots next to it. I'm going to click there so it's not all selected. If we go to look at the code, this is what the code looks like. We have an opening unordered list tag. That's a UL tag. And then every line of our text has got an opening and closing LI tag. So, unordered list, same as before, we just start off with a UL, that makes it unordered. Then we have all that content, and then we close it with an unordered list tag. The difference is when we have an unordered list, that inside of that list, everything is inside of an LI tag. And this is, again, really typical for how a web page is put together. We have an opening and a closing tag that encloses other tags, in this case, the LI, and opening and closing LI, or list items. Let's go back to our design view. Now, if I highlight all of this, and then I'm going to click on my ordered list button, and look, now we've got numbers next to them. And if we go to look at our code, the only difference is we changed OL for ordered, we changed UL from unordered list to OL for ordered list. And you'll see that our ordered list, if I click here in the status bar, is contained inside of what? It's contained inside of a div, which is just a box, right? That wraps up all this text. We have an opening and enclosing div. And these are also, you'll see, to visually help us see what's going on, we indent each time we sort of go one level deeper. The div that is holds our ordered list is contained inside of another div that has a class of row, and this is how Bootstrap arranges things. Items in Bootstrap, typically we enclose them in a column, and the column is contained inside of a row, right? A row goes all the way across a page, but we can have multiple columns in a page. And then all of this is wrapped up inside of a container, and then everything that's in the container is wrapped up inside of the body tag. So if I click on the body tag, we can see the opening and closing body tag, and the whole web page is wrapped up inside of an opening and closing HTML tag. So the thing that makes a web page is a tag that says HTML. When a web browser sees HTML, it knows this is a web page. I'm going to treat it like a web page, and then I can close that, HTML. So that's kind of a quick introduction to some of the most commonly used tags for HTML. There's some others that we're going to be running across. I mentioned there were a couple that did not have an opening and closing tag. One of them is our image tag. We'll be using that when we get to images. Another one is the horizontal rule. We'll be using a few of those. But generally speaking, as we look through here, we can see we always have an opening and a closing tag. And then we have a few HTML formatting rules. We're not going to be doing much with HTML formatting. So that's a quick introduction to HTML.